So I think for the design of what we're going to be doing today, we agreed that I would interview Sally, talking through some of the, what it takes to get on a board, what are the typical requirements of a board member, and kind of like her journey, but also peppering in our own stories of women that we've heard along our own journeys. So if that's okay, I'm going to kick off with a couple of really sort of, I guess, starter questions for you, Sally. Tell us about your personal journey to the boardroom.
Yeah, so thank you for hosting today's webinar, and Naomi, thank you for interviewing me. My own personal journey, and I think the key word in here is it is a journey. As you develop not only your board profile, but then looking at what board opportunities might be right for you. So I did have the experience coming out of my role as CEO of being a board member of my former company, but that is a lot different than being an independent director. So as I started my journey, it was making sure that I had the skills and qualifications needed, and really started to lean into my own network to go and find what organizations I should join to support my journey to the boardroom, and really taking advantage of webinars and also conferences that could make sure that not only could I take my experience from being a board member of my former company, but how do I best manage my own brand as an independent director as well? I think we heard early from one woman on the forum that, she's come close to a board seat as well. Again, it is a journey, and there will be those letdowns along the way where, you're number two. You could use the saying, you've got to kiss a lot of frogs to find the right one. It certainly is that as part of the journey. So be prepared to really lean into some of the positions, but make sure you're the right fit, and it's going to be that right role for you as you embark upon this journey. And I think you and I will get further into the dialogue about the journey as the morning unfolds.
Yeah, and it sounds to me, and if some of you were listening to some of the words that Sally was saying and you were thinking, independent director, what's the difference? I think that's part of what you have to first do if you're looking to be on a corporate board, is really understand the language, understand the terminology, get to know all the roles on a board. What's an audit committee? What's a nomination committee? I know Private Directors Association are really great at teaching some of that. Here at In Touch, we do courses around board preparation so that you really know your stuff. And I really feel like the confidence factor has got to be there. And Sally, it sounds like you kind of learned it as you go. But for people who haven't got that, I think that's one of the big pieces of it, right? Is the confidence in knowing what you're getting into.
Yeah, certainly. Having the confidence, and I did have the benefit of being part of my company board, but that's a lot different than becoming an independent director. And so some of you might be thinking, well, I'm not on my current company's board, or I don't have that opportunity to be there. That's where as well you can learn these skills and build this confidence. Maybe look at non-for-profit boards and getting involved there. That was another part of my path on this journey, is that I also had experience working on industry boards. I was part of the Consumer Technology Association. They're the ones that put on the Consumer Electronics Show in Vegas with 200,000 of my closest friends. We'll see what happens there. But that's a pretty big organization. And also, I was on their governance board. So I was also building that confidence through a non-for-profit industry board as well. So again, it's looking at where in your network can you build these experience, skills, and confidence to be on the board.
And actually, just to add to that, don't think of nonprofit boards as, oh, just a path of, working for free and industry working for free. The network and the relationships that you'll build there will be critical, not just to your executive career, but to also to your board career in the future. I always tell this story. Back in about 12 years ago, I joined my first nonprofit board. And there were lots of professional women on this board. That's another thing to always look for. If you're going to go on a nonprofit board, check out the board beforehand, the other board members. Are they professionals? Are they the types of people that you want to be working with? One of the women that was on that board, she was very determined. She was on a couple of nonprofit boards. Last year, she joined the Container Store board, which is a public company. So these relationships, they may not materialize immediately, but this is a long-term plan. Sally, would you agree on the sort of long-term vision?
It's building those relationships on the other, boards or even civic organizations that you're part of. And really, don't just show up in name, join a committee, lead a committee, give your time to that, so that these relationships and confidence in you as an executive and as a leader naturally build. So it's not fly in and out. It's really and as you say, Naomi, vet early these boards that you might be joining, even on nonprofit, because you're gonna want to be able to give your time to it. You don't want to scatter your time and just be all over the place. When you join an organization, make sure that you can give your time to it and be a known entity within that organization. And a lot of that is through, volunteering for a committee and providing, the knowledge and experience you have that can then certainly translate to other boards that you might have an opportunity to be on. And I certainly had that experience working through the industry board of the Consumer Technology Association.
And I think what's interesting is this sort of mindset, right? The mindset of the board member is very different than the executive. You're an advisor. How did that change? How did your brand change, or your personal brand change, when you decided you were going to go from a CEO and then start to sort of become a board member?
Yeah, so it still is a transition for me, because I was a CEO and an operator longer than a board member. So you really have to, this as the CEO of the business, I really knew all the ins and outs of the business. So I had to take myself to a higher level and draw upon my experience and how I could offer guidance and counseling, and as well as learn from other board members of the experience that they brought. I mean, the great thing about boards is, well, good boards, and part of the reason we're talking today, diversity on boards, is that wide range of experience that you bring. So I had to bring myself as more than the operator of a business. I had to bring my other experience that I had drawn upon, my human resource experience, my M&A experience. Now, my strong lane is operations and strategy, but you really have to bring all of your experience and also work across that diversity of opinions in the board, because I'm a true believer in a diverse board. You're going to get the best results.
So really, it's about everyone kind of looking at their strengths, right? And saying, what are my key skills? But before any of you go about doing that, you have to understand the board role. What is the role of the board member? Because like you said, maybe it's human capital, maybe it's culture, maybe all of these things are things that you do, or maybe it's not. Maybe you would be a financial expert because you're a CPA. So that discovery part has got to happen. And then let's talk a little bit about a board bio or a board resume, right? We can't just go out with our LinkedIn profiles and resumes. How does that, what changes there?
Yeah, so certainly a lot of the journey starts with your board profile, and not, all of the nits that are in a resume per se. They're first looking at you as the wide range of experience and value that you can bring to the board. So I guess one lane certainly is, if you are a financial expert, especially for a public company, then you probably have the ability to chair an audit committee. So that might be the strength that you want to lead with as to how I can support this board. But you're not going to be right for every board. So don't try and position yourself that you're right for every board. Build that board bio based on the strong experience that you've had. And don't only share your business experience, share your personal experience in life and how you've grown and how you work with others as well are really key components when a nominating and governance committee is looking at that first pass of potential board members. They're looking at board bios. And then the second wave of then they'll start to look at your resume and more of your experience by line item.
Yeah, and one of the things that we hear a lot at In Touch is businesses that work with some of our members have said to us, oh, we really like the fact that this person had a board resume. It showed that they were serious about getting on a board. It's almost like you're putting yourself forward and you're making it known that you're a board member versus oh, here's just a resume of who I am and here you go, right? It shows that professionalism. But let's talk a little bit about network, because I know network has been crucial to you and it's crucial to everyone. And I know we put it out there and say, build your network. You know, what does that really look like? This is about quality, not quantity at this stage in our careers. How you know, what's your advice on that? And what's your own personal story?
Yeah, so, you know, I really started with my own network and them helping guide me. You know, one of the key components of my network was the CFO that I worked with and his reach in other companies. One of my board seats was through a journey of working with a banker. I got introduced to this banker through a relationship my CFO had. And then, you know, knowing my former CFO and him, you know, saying that how we worked well together led to a board opportunity for me. It actually led to a consulting opportunity with a company that then led to, will you join our board as well? So sometimes the path isn't directly there as well. But your referrals about your personal character, and that's where sometimes people say, well, just introduce me to a bunch of board recruiters. That's not going to get you there. No. They might be part of the process because many nominating and governance committees are going to use an executive recruiter to help them vet candidates. But you can get into that pool of candidates other than just having that connection with that executive recruiter. You can get into their pool through your network. So don't think your network is probably going to do more for you than other paths into the boardroom. But I also wanted to point out as well, prior to this question is, Naomi, you mentioned don't just have your resume. Having a board bio shows that you're committed to this process and you're committed to this journey. So a lot of it depends upon where you're at in your career. And so if you're sitting in an executive position right now at a company, the other thing that you need to check as well is that you don't have conflicts. So check with your current organization to say, you know, some organizations are that you cannot be on a board, a paid board position while in role here. Where other organizations, they're promoting their executives to be on boards because it promotes their own management skills and learning from others. But really make sure at the beginning that you don't have any conflicts, either with your current organization or the path forward that you want to build as well. And that was one of the things that I had to realize on my own journey was that I'm setting out on this and I'm not going to have any conflicts with it.
You know, there's some really good questions. Thank you for that, Sally, that I think we could interject here. One is, you know, how and why do you find board service satisfying? You know, and what experiences have you had with dysfunctional boards and how do you manage through that? Because as much as people want to get on a board, we need to be careful. It's a good board to be on.
Yeah, do you want me to take that?
Could you take that, or
Yeah.
Naomi, either one of you?
Yeah. Well, I'll start. It is good to get to know your fellow board members. So your initial journey is with normally the nominating and governance committee, but if you're not getting exposed to the other board members and being able to have conversations with them prior to joining, that would be a really big red flag for me. I spoke with every member of the board prior to joining the board of the public company that I'm on. And really part of that was, is this a team that I can work with? Do I understand their backgrounds and the skills that they're bringing to make sure that the value that I'm bringing is really going to add to the company and shareholder value of the company? And last but not least is that if I hadn't had that opportunity as well, it was almost my own prior onboarding to the board prior to becoming a member of the board, was really to understand from board members' perspectives how they felt I could add value to the board, so that once we had that first meeting, I felt comfortable with all of the members of the board. And there was a lot going on at this company when I joined. They had just acquired another company out of bankruptcy. So I'm glad I did my homework. I clearly knew what I was getting into. And I also realized that at this point, it's probably going to take a little more of my time than I had originally thought on the outset of joining this board.
The one thing I would add, just in terms of rewarding, don't think about it as an isolated situation. Boards, what you will learn on a board, you will bring back to your executive role, if some of you are still in executive roles. Critical thinking, problem solving, emotional intelligence, these are some of the skills you're going to hone on a board. Not every day do we need to solve problems like we do at the board level. And also, don't underestimate what it's like to be in a room with people who are your peers, if not more senior level to you, listening to their questions, listening to their answers, seeing how they solve problems. I mean, it's a hugely rewarding in terms of building yourself, and actually your companies should encourage it. Not to sit on 4 boards, that's too many, but to have one, maybe an advisory board. We talked about industry boards and nonprofits, and advisory boards are a nice one too. They're not, again, do your research. It's another conversation for another day. They're a little different from boards of directors, but these are nice ways to just kind of get your feet wet in this topic. But I think the reward is huge for both you personally and the businesses that you work in.
And related to what you're saying here, someone asked, are boards working for a specific skill set when they're adding their next person? Are they looking for a generalist, or do they really want a more specialist person?
I mean, I can sort of just tell you from the businesses that we work with, it all depends. It depends on the size of the company, depends on what industry they're in. But I would say this, we do get pretty specific lists of skills that they need. They don't just need a person to sit in a seat. Those are the old days, right? Just get me a CEO and have them sit in that chair there and make decisions. But now that there's a lot more involved. But I will say this, you do need to have a pretty broad range of skills. You need to understand cybersecurity and the threats. You need to understand the human capital and the importance of it. And you need to get a broad range, but you don't need to be the expert in all of that. I don't know, Sally, if you'd agree with seeing that change happening.
Yeah, so definitely seeing that change happen. And some of the reasons why there could be an opening for a board member could be one board member is leaving the board. Some boards have term limits, so that might be a reason for an opening. Another reason is that the board has determined that they need to expand the board. And usually that occurs when there is a need for a specific skill set. So what the board is doing behind the scenes is looking at their current board members, and it's a matrix, and the skill sets that they have. And then where is there a gap based on where the company's strategy is going. An example to use is if they're embarking upon an international expansion and they've never done anything beyond, the US, then probably they're going to be looking for somebody with international experience. So that's where, again, Naomi and I mentioned having a broad profile, but probably leading with what is your unique skill set that you can bring. And you're not going to be right for every board. There is a matrix behind the scenes that they're trying to fill. The days of, bring my buddy that I knew from the country club are hopefully over. So definitely looking at skills.
And there was another question here about how much time is reasonable to dedicate towards a board assignment in order to be effective. I know you mentioned some have terms, but are there, is there kind of guidelines around that?
Well, I guess maybe in twofold that question. Certainly some boards have terms, so that
Sure.
might be 5 years. But boards, they definitely want a commitment from you. And that's, again, where backing up and making sure that you don't have any conflicts now or in the future, because it takes a lot to vet a board member and onboard a board member. So you don't want your brand to be known as that person that joined a board and then a year later you hopped off because of a conflict, or there's always reasons for it. You don't want to be known as that. Now, time commitment is normally provided to you in the specification for the board of beforehand. They'll tell you how many meetings they have, how many committees they expect you to be on. So that's, there you have a general idea of how much time you're going to commit to the board. And so, just based on other things that you have going on, you find, do I have time for this or not? But I do have to say, there's a lot of prep before board meetings. That's not in the spec. Everybody learns at their own pace. So I can't say that, some people can prepare for a board meeting in 2 hours. Some can take a lot longer. I think 2 hours is on the light side. Just reading all of the board materials and preparation. And the other part is, when you're on a board, it's really good to be involved in other organizations. I'm involved in the Private Directors Association. I'm involved in NACD, National Association of Corporate Directors. And I'm also involved in Women Corporate Directors. That is to make sure that I am staying up on all of the governance topics.
Yeah, and I think that's the really important piece here, is that this is a whole new world for a lot of people who have never embarked on a board role. Even if you've been on a nonprofit board, it's very, very different. And that's why these organizations exist, right? That's why we're out there doing this, because it's constantly changing, but it is pretty new for most people. So it's really worth that learning and development that you do in the beginning is absolutely essential.
I think it's what you'll get out of it, what you put into it. It's an investment in your future. And And
I do want to one other thing. Here at In Touch, we're big proponents of coaching, and we have board coaches that work with our members, and they do exactly this. They coach, they put together a plan for an individual who's really keen to get on a board and wants to fast track this, and goes through exactly what we've been through here today, but really just, holds your hand through the whole event. And I know, Sally, you know that it's really valuable. Do you have any experiences around coaching?
Yeah, I worked with a coach myself through my own transition from being CEO of a company, and a lot of that was she happened to be on boards herself and helped me transition to this. She was former general counsel of a company, and really held me accountable to, one, is this a path I want to go on? And once I embarked upon this journey, really helped me prepare for the differences of operating a company and then getting involved in these other networks. And it's part of being a board member is that you really have to have the skill of wanting to be a lifelong learner. and learning about the new businesses and being really curious about them. And that's where I think once a week I'm involved in some sort of board governance topic so that I can bring more to the board than just my past experiences.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so if I, it's an investment in you, it's an investment in time, it's investment in your learning and development, your networking, the people you have around you. It's a big commitment, but it's hugely rewarding. And I don't know, Sally, what's my personal plan. I'm on a couple of advisory boards today. I don't have time for a board of directors, but I'm looking probably in the next 5 years to start, and then looking into the next 15 to 20 years to maybe retire and have, work on a few boards. Sally, what's your long-term vision for this?
Yeah, so the boards that I'm on right now, it is a very rewarding experience, and it's been a year with, who would have predicted January 1 that we'd be in this COVID situation. It's taken a lot more time, but how we can really help the management teams and be not only good fiduciaries for the company, but sounding boards for them, is part of what I wanted to do in this next stage of my career. So I look to this to be able to help and support companies for just as long as my prior career was, for the next 20, 25 years, to be able to continue upon helping and supporting companies through their boards and helping them with their governance and being a good fiduciary for shareholders. So, but I definitely, it was a pivot in my career and a conscious choice of, I'm not going to go and operate companies anymore.
Right.
And then Sally, I was curious, there's a lot of questions around some of those organizations you mentioned. Do you need to be on a board to be able to get into those organizations?
So a couple of them you do. So NACD, National Association for Corporate Directors, you need to be on a board. I think there are some ways to get in without being on a board there. And I could follow up with you, Barbara, to send information to the people that have been on the call today. Private Directors Association, you do not need to be on a board, and they also offer a training program as well. So that, is an organization that you could start to learn, to network, to know the language of boards as well. So so some of them you do need to be on boards.
Then a question was, and I've had this from other women, if you are not in a C-suite seat, is it hard to get on a board? And, does that make more sense to start with a private board? If you don't have that public company experience, is that also a big hurdle from having a position on a public company board?
Good. Naomi, do you want to go, or
Either
I
one
can?
of you?
No, yeah. So, if you have never been on, if you want to get onto a public company board, you give yourself about 4 to 5 years and get started at private companies. It's really a build. I mean, I can say that for most people. I don't know everybody in the room. Sure, if you've been the CEO of a Fortune 500 company, you probably fall right into a publicly traded board. So yes, but for most people who haven't been at that level, then they'll need to start small and work their way up. You don't need to be in the C-suite. No. If you're talking about a startup or a smaller company, start there, start somewhere. Like I said, you'll learn a lot from just being in the room with people. And so, yeah, I mean, when we talk about boards, I know we're being very vague here. NACD is very geared towards publicly traded companies. There's others that are with private. And so there are tiny companies, startups of 3 people, right? You can be on their board. So there really is a vast range that you can kind of go for. Don't think that it's just the Exxon Mobils of this world,
Our intention on this call today was really to educate and empower you. So Naomi and Sally, beyond what you referenced on the call, what are the resources related to your businesses or network that you suggest women who are joining us today can consider to learn more about developing their board-ready skills?
Sally, do you want to go first?
Oh, sure, sure. Certainly getting involved in organizations, whether, as Barbara mentioned at the beginning, I'm the leader of the Private Directors Association here in Chicago. That was just one of the organizations that I joined to start to get more involved in what does governance look like. And then, building out my network from there as well. And I had a coach along the way, and I had support along the way as well. So I encourage you, if you are really interested in going upon this journey, an investment in a coach can really help move you along.
Yeah, and just a recap of In Touch. So we're a membership organization of 40,000 members worldwide. We have a specific, women directors channel where you have courses, coaching, learning development, resume writing. We do board bios as well. And we actually do cover letters. And we don't have to do them for you, but I can certainly give some people some advice on how to write one of those. So we're open, and we're a very diverse group, but we're very forward thinking. We're about bringing in the next generation of board members. And so more practical advice and guidance.
Thank you to you both for investing the time in all of us and in this community today.